Good morning. Welcome to the Bible Nation podcast. We are post-election today, and it looks like the GOP has won big, a landslide election. Trump has won. The Senate has been overturned. Popular vote has been won. The Electoral College was a landslide. And Christian conservatives are excited, even giddy. And so today we're going to talk about, is there a possibility of going through this process again in 4 years and doing it differently or even doing it better? Some people would say just rest on their laurels right now. But I think now's the time to have the discussion. Can we improve the U.S. elections and the process? And I kind of subtitled this, Did Jerry Falwell Get It Right? Because he was all about just getting people registered to vote. So we're going to talk about this and a lot of other things on the Bible Nation podcast today. Remember, the best culture is the Bible culture. It's proven and it works. What are we standing up for? The ability, the freedom to do what's right as God defines that right.
God's the ultimate author of liberty.
We don't want government to stand between us and our freedom to do what is right. All right, I'm here with Pastor Jason Georges of Emmanuel Baptist Church and the newest treasurer from the Caledonia Township, Shiawassee County, Michigan election with 1,800 votes, Jesse Levesque. Congratulations, Jesse. So he's going to be on the political conversation since he's the only person in this room that's ever won a political battle.
He's actually an elected official.
So we're going to give him victory on that today. And then also we've got Jackson, our sound and video guy, and he's got great opinions that don't matter, but we're going to let him come in today and say what he wants to say. So, Pastor Jason, we did it. Yep. Conservatives won. I don't know how much I did. I was probably the least involved that I've ever been involved.
And then we won. I was telling someone else, like last cycle, we were super involved with everything going on here in the state of Michigan, and we lost.
So maybe the trick is
don't get involved.
Be quiet.
I was telling Tony, I was like, you realize like last cycle we were like super involved, and we went down in flames, and this time we weren't. I said maybe we're just like cut out for politics.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, hey, let's stick to evangelism, right? And let's just win the world in Christ. We're excited though. We do believe that the Bible is the cultural icon. It makes for the best society, and that's why we discuss all these different issues. So let's talk about elections. I mean, if you're going to have a nation, I want to be a part of a nation that has elections. And we do have that. We are a representative republic, and the people that we vote for go and represent us in Washington, in our state, in Lansing, and other states. And I hope that continues. But that also can be manipulated and has been manipulated. And that's why everybody was afraid of, no matter who won, that we were going to have more discord, more corruption, et cetera, et cetera. And I think it's a fair conversation. So let's just have a running commentary on this election. Are you guys ready for that?
Yeah.
So I'll pose the first question. I want to comment on the results. Everyone's saying this is Trump saying this is the most remarkable comeback of all time, and I even heard some people saying resurrection on the terms. And so let's talk about that. Pastor Jay, what is your thoughts on this?
Listen, just put it in the historical perspective. It's only happened one other time. Grover Cleveland in the late 1800s was elected, lost an election, and then came back and won again. So
this is only the second time in American
history. Well, knowing how Trump left office last time, I mean, just his reputation-wise, obviously, whatever your opinion is of what you think happened on January 6th, the media, we can say the media was effective on cloaking him in that. Yes. And all of his whole movement, right? Yes. The MAGA movement. And so to see where they were 4 years ago and then to come back. Now, I think the Democrats helped them. I mean, we had an ineffective and a president that was not coherent, an incoherent president.
Trying to get rid of the gray hair Biden and da-da-da-da. But then they had all the young people that kind of disregarded the wisdom of the ancients, even in their own party.
I think they thought it was going to work. I think Biden was a placeholder for as long as he possibly could, and then we have this unusual early debate, which is unusual. Yeah, it was that early in the summer, which was kind of now in hindsight, you think they're ready to have to bring in a new person. Yeah, and I think and I think Kamala was going to be
Do you think the Democrats
the problem with the
threw
verdict
her out there as like the scapegoat? Like, we know we're going to lose. Let's let her lose.
I think the bureaucracy wanted her. I think just like Biden could be, because it's really not the politician; it's the bureaucracy.
Yeah.
It is that what do they call it? The dark.
Yeah.
It is that part of, jump in here if you know
Cabal?
No, not the cabal, but like there is that there's another word that they use for it. The DC elites, the machine.
Mm-hmm.
And we've done stuff in Washington DC.
The woke religion.
Yeah. And that's who they all are, and they're unaccountable. And so I think Biden did their bidding. And it was not because at one time in his life he wasn't able to do it. He's just old man, right?
Yeah.
And then I think Kamala was their choice to do their bidding.
Yeah.
And would step in line. And so I thought, Trump, they helped Trump in that aspect, but it is a historic resurrection in the sense of I've heard like the Phoenix idea.
I've heard it. Well, it seems to me like Trump has played a game of knuckles and then brought him down, and now they're all like, okay, let's be at peace now, or whatever. Because that's kind of what it feels like after all that he did suffer and go through. It's now personal, and so we'll see.
Well, and think about just the value of unshakable confidence, because everyone, I mean, anecdotally, statistically, everyone would say you have no prayer, but here's a man who is so self-confident that can hear. Though 1,000 voices would be against him, it doesn't deter him.
Yeah.
I mean, like.
Yeah.
So what a.
I mean that's good or bad, but it's a thing.
It's a thing.
It is a thing.
It is a thing.
But I mean, they couldn't have had a worse candidate than Kamala. I mean, I know she was a woman, and that's percentages in politics, and I know she, she's articulate in a sense, but like there was zero policy out there. Jesse, go ahead.
Well, she struggled to say anything intelligent in most of her rallies and things, and she just kept saying the same lines over and over again. And they played the black female card about as much as they could have possibly played that. Right. I've been reading headlines from different groups, a group in town even, responding to the fact, and it's basically like people didn't vote for Trump, they voted against a woman, or it's the reaction. So I think part of the strong feelings about his comeback, to me, a lot of it just represents how lied to everybody was because a lot of his support never changed their mind. We don't like a lot of the things he did. Yeah. I'm not saying we like him as a Trumper, because I'm not. Yeah. But we don't like a lot of the things he did. Yeah. But there was still support for him. Yeah. It didn't altogether go away.
I don't really want a president who's like into the WWE. That just almost turns me off. You know what I'm saying? But I think a lot of the vote, like I'm like, how in the world could half the population want Kamala? It just, but I think it wasn't for her. I think it was just against Trump. Mm-hmm. I think that's some of the we're not voting for Trump again sort of thing, But anyways, well, let's move on. Commentary on this particular cycle. This particular cycle had really her getting to run for president without actually getting voted. Biden got voted. I mean, was that a tactic? Is that a subversion of American politics? Can we have what do they call it? The red dictate, where the candidate is a communist and they sneak them in. That's kind of like the plan. And there's been movies made about the Manchurian candidate sort of thing. I mean, this is the closest I've ever really felt that was the case. Like we could have someone that's barely been elected to anything squeak in on nothing. How could this particular cycle been different? What if Biden did stay with it? Or should we put in measures that protect from the Manchurian candidate? Does the Democratic Party just get ramrodded?
I think they would have. I think the Democratic Party today would be in a better position had they just gone down with Biden.
Right.
I think the play makes them weaker right now.
Right.
And it exposed it because it exposed their hubris and their just big assumption. Yeah. And it, there was one commentator was talking today that they are out of touch with how Americans think. And right. But every election really is a test to see how farther away we can get from God. Yeah. And so we push against the fence, we push, and sometimes they get we get an Obama who can push us and take us there, and everyone's happy. And then every once in a while they push a little too far. Yeah. And I think Kamala was a push too far. But what do you call it when you when
she didn't even show up at Netanyahu's speech in Congress.
Yeah,
Remember that?
I mean,
she didn't even show up.
She was, and I think on the personal side, you're just analyzing these two characters, personalities. You have Trump, who is very comfortable in his own skin, so much to the point that you can laugh at him and it doesn't bother him, or it doesn't rock his confidence. And you had Kamala, who there may not be anything in there.
Right.
And I mean of substance, because she ran this campaign so as not to offend or to, there was no
like
substance.
High school prom queen.
Yeah,
that's what she was running on, because it wasn't.
I will not say anything that will cause anyone to vote against me. And Trump says, Trump was like, I don't have to win the whole country.
Yeah.
I just got to win more than you.
Yeah.
And so I'm banking that there's more people. So I'm not trying to court your upper 15%, but I will say this, talking about, and we're all over the place, but what a power move coming to Dearborn and just skimming a few, even a little bit of the Arab population, and who knows what he promised the mayor of Dearborn, and I don't want to question that man's integrity, but that was a last second.
Well, the Lebanese that were in Dearborn, they're in charge there. I mean, they're not all Muslim. The Lebanese, and they want the war to end. Number one, but number two, they want Hezbollah out. So they're not going to say they're pro-Israel, but so people don't understand that dynamic. What's going on.
And it ending, and I hope it ends in a favorable way where Israel's safety is assured. Yeah. I mean, I don't want the war to go on perpetually, and we're not for just nonstop destruction, right? But Israel has to have the right to protect itself, and that has to be assured. And so I'm optimistic. Well, between the two of them, I'm more optimistic that Trump can do it. Yeah. I don't have a lot of hope he's going to do it, but I'm more optimistic.
It just seems this particular cycle, we had Harris and we had Trump.
Yeah.
And we had two different philosophies of clowndom.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I don't like. Lord, deliver us from that. Give us more substance. Go ahead.
When we talk about the switch being made in communities, like the switch from, like Dearborn, we brought up Dearborn. The numbers in the 2020 election, 88% of Dearborn voted for Biden, 11% for Trump. 2024 result, 43% of Dearborn voted for Donald Trump.
He cut that in half.
Yeah. And he realized, I have to just skim a little bit. What I was thinking about that also is it's not only because they said there was a lot of new Republican registration, so he got people to vote that didn't vote last time. But every time you take one person away from her, you switch the Latino vote, you switch some of the black male vote, you switch some of the Arab or like the Dearborn vote, and that's not only a +1 for you, that's a -1 for her.
Right.
And so it's actually like a +2. Yeah. Because you're switching, when you turn somebody, that's actually a +2.
It's like a conference game.
Yeah. But on that topic, what do you call it when someone says something but then does the opposite? What's that term? I can't grab it.
Hypocritical?
Yeah, but that hypocritical. Well, because they're the ones claiming Trump is the threat against democracy, and yet their whole selection process was wholly undemocratic.
Right.
And then even now, they're like, in the aftermath of the election, democracy is under threat because we had a democratic election.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, democracy is pretty safe right now. Actually, when democracy, even from your perspective, makes a stupid choice, but it seems like it was a valid,
secure election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good democracy.
Yeah. I mean, Go ahead.
Well, it's amazing that you just mentioned those Dearborn statistics, considering the fact that when stuff's going on in Hamas, they're marching in the streets in Dearborn.
Yeah.
So that alone is amazing. But I wanted to go back to something about Harris, because he mentioned her strategy. She might have done better just to roll with what she did for the last 4 years.
Right.
I heard someone else say, either go with what you did or distance yourself, but she didn't do a good job distancing herself from him either. She kind of half-heartedly did it. She tried. But then even when she was asked on several occasions, what would you have done differently? Yeah. Because she can hardly speak to any of her policy or things she's done. There was no substance there either. So she didn't do either well.
Which coincidentally, I heard one commentator talk about that moment. The biggest gaffe of her campaign was when she was asked, what would you do differently? And she says, well, I was involved with every major decision.
That was on The View.
It was on The View. On the very show that should have helped her the most. Her demise was on The View.
Oh, my goodness, yeah. And, the other thing is, we don't wish evil on anybody, even though, we don't think she would have been the right person, or we think she would have taken us a different direction. But how devastating is it, you know what I mean, to to carry the water, and everybody thinks you're supposed to win, and then you don't. I mean, that's just horrible. But let's go to improving the race. I think improving American politics, and particularly the presidential race, we've got to shorten the game. If you're part of the Big Ten, you can't practice during the summers. You can only have the rules on this with lifting weights, and you can only start practice here. You can only practice so many hours a day. Your budget has to be this and this. And I know there's some of those rules, and every state is different. But with the presidential race, man, I would love to shorten this race.
Yeah.
And just, rather than make it a 2-year process, and it is a 2-year process. And of course, it'll start tomorrow again. But it would be great if we could just, say, here's the dollar amount cap, and let you raise the cap. Mm-hmm. You can raise the cap. Everybody's got the same money, right? And then here's the time. Now, I don't know. What do you think about that? How can we improve the race? Should we shorten the game? Should we make the presidential race something that's not just who can get more media popularity or more money?
So if I were to put it in order of importance, so this would be the order executed at this level.
Yeah.
Is number one, secure it with ID. That's number one. Yeah. I would actually, I don't like, because my number 2 would be shorten the voting period, not all this mail-in ballot.
Right.
But the bigger threat is not lack of ID.
Right.
So I would
Who's
say,
voting?
I would say if I had to take one or the other, I would take guaranteed ID.
Mm-hmm.
We know who's voting. You're an American citizen that constitutionally is legal, a legal voter. But then the next thing is shorten the mail-in period and the availability. Because I was talking to someone, historically, there is a certain providence that takes place on election day.
Yes.
A storm.
Yeah.
Something's going on, whether you're alive, and so there is
you can vote, die, and still be in the
right. And so to me, there was a layer of this one day vote that the providence of God, and so it's almost, to me, and this is like stretching it, is by extending it out, you're trying to erase that. Yeah. You're trying to erase the circumstantial things that would affect.
If you get to them too, the media can manipulate. Well, this are the percentages of this. And this state opens their ballots, and we get in other states who don't know what's going on, and that kind of really leads into the next thing.
And then I would say the third thing is the money. To agree with you, and just not only the money, but they spend it so stupid. Here's the problem. It's not. I don't know if I have a problem with how much they collect. No. Because how we donate money is probably part of our First Amendment.
Sure.
To express ourselves. Sure. But there is a lot of middlemen in the process that are getting rich. Like the military war complex. Yeah. There's the political complex as well. Yeah. And there's organizations, a lot of these Republicans or Democrats will run for office. They have to get these consultants. Mm-hmm. And the consultant doesn't care if you win or not. Right. They just want you to raise a bunch of money, spend it, and they take their 30%. Right. And that's the crime in all this thing. Yeah. We got to get rid of that.
There's definitely room for corruption in any politics. And in American politics, I don't think you're going to do it. But I just know people are so sick. And is that part of the game, getting sick of it? But if we just said it's a 4 to 6 month thing, and you can have, $20 billion or something. I mean, we're not saying you can't do anything on it, but can you raise that much? And just kind of capping it. I know, I've run for office several times. There's limits on what people can give. Yep. But you create a PAC, and then Musk can give $150 million or whatever differently. So should we tighten that up? And I think the next thing is improving the election day hassle. Should we go retro? That is 1 day, 1 paper ballot, 1 voter with ID, one day, and then 1 following day of count. So I'm just keeping it a holy, sacred, American day almost, and maybe even calling it a national holiday or something. Or are we just at the point of no return, like Trump, and then so it's done, it's registered, and then let it be a month-long vote or whatever. And this is you've got, retro, which makes sense and is good, but then you're in modernity, and so do we just go ahead with it? Are we right now trying to bring both together?
I do think it should be 1 day. Yeah. And there's still an absentee process, which you can still do. Right. And you can turn those in prior to election day. Right. So there's still that availability.
But listen, 20 years ago, you had to be a military guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was it.
Right.
So now they've opened it up to everybody, which just opens the door for possibilities.
Sure.
You see what I'm saying? So I'm thinking ahead 20 years, like, you know, and what do we go? So I'm with you. Let's make it one sacred day.
I'd love it to be a national holiday. What's more American than the process that we have, and that everybody gets a vote, just to kind of, you know, remove those excuses too. But I do agree with Pastor Jay on that. There's something about the one day, the providence of God,
and it's not in the Constitution. The Constitution doesn't say November 5th, right? It was in kind of the sub-charter things that aren't really constitutional that has put it at the, you know, second Tuesday after the first Monday. That's kind of how that goes. But that's all, you know, I've written about that was just something that was kind of added addendum, you know, because of modernity. So modernity is going to affect the election process.
As much as I'm a fan of the ease of technology and everything, if you're watching like The Voice or Dancing with the Stars and you want to vote for somebody, you just, you know, text their name.
Yeah.
And it would be a shame.
They're charging you $3.99 or $8.99 or
But it would be a shame, I feel like, to have our presidential election on that same level.
Yes.
As much as I'm a fan of the tech.
Because when Trump went and worked at McDonald's and got in the garbage truck, that was America's Got Talent right there.
Right.
And he is, you know, you're fired. He is the ultimate reality game show guy. And so if that's what it comes to, that's modernity.
Right. Yeah, it's a reality show now.
A millennial in me would like to be able to see, because you can go, Secretary of State, make sure you're registered to vote, you see your precinct, polling hours and all that. So there's part of me that would like to, just for the confidence in the whole thing, be able to go see that my vote was cast and counted somewhere connected to where they already have all my information, Secretary of State.
And that would be a digital process.
And it would be. And you know, I don't know, I've talked to other people that would like to see it.
Well, I think the Scantron method is the best of both worlds, right? Mm-hmm. So you have the digital counting, but there is a physical piece of paper that exists that when in question ought to be examinable.
Yeah.
So if it comes to question, there should be boxes and we can sit there and we can count 1, 2, 1, 2.
I think if we're going to get into modernity, it's got to be an American public company like PBS or the Red Cross. We don't need to outsource the computers to Germany, you know, or the software to Canada. I think, you know, I think you get...
Well, some of the voter fraud is people that like, they weren't supposed to be able to vote, but we can't get their ballot back out, so their vote counted.
Right. And the courts then deal with it every time, and we've got 50 different states doing it, which in some cases is a beautiful thing. The rest of the world just scratches their head at us, and so our forefathers were pretty good at you know, laying out some foundations, but they could not have foreseen modernity either.
Well, so listen, coincidentally, and this is the Bible Nation podcast. Little quick Google search. You know, so Tuesday. Mm-hmm. So originally, it was 45 days from the first Wednesday in December, states could vote. Mm-hmm. Problem was they were all voting on different days, so then people would know the outcome, and it was deterrent voting. Yeah. So then they selected a day, and they at first selected the first Monday in November. Right. But get this: the reason they had to switch it to Tuesday is farmers go to church on Sunday, and sometimes you had to travel to vote and you couldn't get there on Monday. So the reason we vote on Tuesdays is because Americans went to church on Sunday and needed Monday to travel.
Lord, that's the providential hand.
Isn't that cool? That's cool. Like now, I love Tuesday now. Yeah. Now
it's sacred.
That's Tuesday. Yeah.
All right, let's go to improving the turnout. And this is where I threw Jerry Falwell in there, because Jerry Falwell, whatever you like or don't like about the guy, he called it the moral majority, and of course the left says it's neither. It's neither moral nor the majority, and I mean they're right in some cases, especially today when you look at the percentages. But he just went about registering church people of all sorts, not just, you know, Southern Baptists or something like that. And how well are we doing on that? And if so, should we start tomorrow so that we ensure the election? I mean, why do we wait till the very end and then have these things? Like, if that's the answer, should we start tomorrow with voter registration of all the conservative Christians or whatever? Yeah.
Voter registration, but also, I mean, it seems like it was about a month or so ago that headlines are, you know, Texas has removed this many hundreds of thousands of people off their voter registration.
Yeah.
I'm like, why isn't that happening everywhere? Why are they waiting until now?
Election time.
Why not, you know, do that when we had all these issues last election? And, you know, so...
That's why I'm talking about this now, because it's not just a matter of us saying, yay, we won or something, because I don't really feel that way, to be honest with you. But I think this is a matter of improving things and what should we be thinking about going forward as far as if this thought can reach the Christian community and then reach Lansing or reach Washington, D.C. And I'm sure there are other people talking about it. But,
it's really incumbent on a lot of those positions like clerks at every level, Secretary of State too. I mean, that's their part of their responsibility, and so
more civic training and more local involvement.
That ought to be something if you got one of those positions that you're fighting for. That's just so important.
Yeah.
Well, and it really, voter turnout comes down just to motivation, and so there's a reason why women vote at a higher level than men, because men are just a little bit more apathetic about those kind of things. It doesn't matter or whatnot, and so really an election comes down to who can be the greater motivator.
Yeah.
And sometimes that motivator is for a candidate, or I think a lot of this one was like, as I judge my opinion of this outcome, I have to admit, whatever I'm happy Trump won, I'm probably more happy Harris lost.
Sure.
And so, what's your motivation?
I never voted for Trump for obvious reasons and for issues. We even did a podcast that was Trump, the good, the bad, and the ugly, whatever. And I fear that sort of person as much or more than a Harris or a Biden, who are just puppets of some idea. You know what I mean? They're not convincing. But I went in and voted for my dad, who's a vet, who fought communism, who needs the VA. I went in and fought and voted for Israel. So to me, it was GOP. I just voted GOP ticket, turned over, voted local things. Because I wasn't really jazzed. This was probably the least excited I ever was to do it. Now I'm glad at the outcome.
I thought for a second that you meant you voted for Terry Levesque. Terry Levesque for president.
Terry Levesque for president.
Listen, my dad would be a benevolent dictator, and in 24 hours he'd have everybody bombed that needed to be bombed. So that's shout out to you, Dad.
And the voter apathy is a big thing. I ran unopposed. Which I'm happy about. I didn't have to run. I didn't have to spend. I'm a cheapskate. I didn't have to spend any money on signs or anything like that. But there's a part of me that's like, there's people in our community that have value, And so there's just the apathy to even run a candidate. And that was even in our county. There were some unopposed positions at the county, and it's like getting the game. Yeah. You almost want there to be that.
Yeah. And God. Give us good inspirational and motivational leaders, because short of that, it's just, you go to other countries, they don't even fly their flag. And they're like, why America's so stupid? They're all, that sort of thing. We still have that good semblance here to some extent. All right, let's go to improving the count. Right now we want instant count, like you said, we could see. But it's taking a few days even to figure things out. Can we improve the count?
It's the thing that gets me with the count is it doesn't take up the same proportion of time for the same size cities. Some cities seem to take days.
Yeah.
When some cities have them in. Right. End of the day, you just wonder, obviously there's different people in every city running it, but how can every city count those votes at the same speed? Yeah. How can we just get that?
Because if it's, we're going to go back to paper ballots or whatever, or it's the computer, that's longer time to manipulate the computer, or it's longer time to have pre-votes in the closet that you're bringing out. And so I do think we're in modernity, and instantaneous would be good. That doesn't mean it can't be manipulated, Mm-hmm. And, right now, like in Michigan, we had the Slotkin and Mike Rogers race, which is probably one of the closest ones. I think right now they gave it to her, and it was like 18,000 votes, which seems, significant enough to me. But it was like a 3%. And in Michigan, Rogers can say, I want a recount.
Yeah, that was shady.
Yeah, it is.
That one's shady. Yeah. I mean, because
particularly
we went to bed
in the same congressional district, the Republicans won hands down.
Right. No, that one's shady. Yeah. Now, I gotta admit, that one is shady. She's ex-CIA.
Well, and so is Rogers. Rogers.
No, they're both.
Was it Warren County the holdup or what?
Yeah, that one's just shady. And supposedly, I've heard reports that 20,000 plus of his votes were thrown out or something like that. That one just seems that she has been, the reason I'm a little familiar with her is because she ran against Tom Barrett.
Yeah.
And he's a good friend of ours.
Yeah.
And
Tom won his
congressional. Yeah, Tom won. Yeah, I'm really happy for that. Yeah. Tom is a good guy.
He's a Catholic, pro-life guy.
But he's principled.
Family guy.
And he takes it to him.
Soldier.
Yeah. He's Army helicopter pilot. Yeah. But in his time in Lansing, he really took it to as much as a politician does. Yeah. But yeah, that one's kind of funny to me.
Yeah.
And it almost gives some credence to the too big to rig. I know it's just deviating, but if you line up the number of votes Democrats got over the last 8 elections, it's a nice line across like every year, except for last time when Biden won. Right. It was a weird anomaly.
Yeah.
Which then just like, where in the world? How did you bring out hundreds of thousands of more voters? And
that's why everybody was like, whatever happens this time, we're locked and loaded, because people felt like it got robbed last time.
Yeah.
But what you've done now is you've just given Trump an opportunity to have 3, because he can win now and win again, rather than having won and been done.
Yeah.
Like
he's done this time.
Is that what he said?
No. Constitutionally, you only get 2 terms, though.
Well, back to back.
Back to back. You can run for a third, I believe.
Well, can't
no,
you?
I don't think you can.
It's a max of
I
10
heard
years,
someone writing this.
It's a max of 10 years, I thought.
Yeah, I don't think you can
run. Am I thinking wartime?
No, I don't know. I'm just like, if he has a double right now, can somebody run and in between have something going? I don't know. That's something we need to figure out. Well, how do we improve the electoral college? Do we keep it, kill it, or change it? That sounds like a game in a dorm room. Yeah. Keep it, kill it, change it. Because it's under a lot of scrutiny and a lot of fight. Because we get the point where the popular vote in electoral colleges are they're different. So
and I even looked just at the amount of states, and it's probably, I don't know if it's quite 2/3 goes red, 1/3 goes blue, but so I always look at that too, and you look at the smaller states, and if you're in one of those states, you probably feel like it doesn't matter as much, which is, we're in Michigan, we're a battleground state every time, so there's some.
Well, then every state doles out its electoral college votes differently too. Yeah. That's why last time you had people saying, no, those weren't electoral voters. We're the electoral voters, or the people elected. And so people are saying that's a subversion of the election, but they do have a point based upon how their state gives out electoral votes, that if it's just it's in the governor's strong hand, where's that written down? And that's what happened in Michigan. That's what happened in a couple other places. So I think we're going to hear more about that. We might do a whole podcast on the electoral college and get someone else in here to show its strength, but also to say what could we do.
So it's the 22nd Amendment that limits, so no person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice, and no person who has held the office of president or acted as president for more than 2 years of a term to which some other person was elected president shall be elected to the office of president more than once.
So he's right. 10 years.
Do you have the date of that amendment? Because I'm thinking
it's 45. It's after Roosevelt.
Okay, I was tripping up. I'm like, I know that there's a president, but his was wartime as well.
But if you're a vice president, take over, you can still get 2 terms. So 10 years max. That's what you're saying, right? Is that how you would interpret that, Pastor George?
Yeah. Well, I think the way I'm reading it is, if you serve 2, like you take over, then that counts as one of your terms. So if you're saying 6 years, someone could actually be limited to 6 years.
Okay,
that's how I read it. But you're not going to get 3. You're not going to win 3 times.
All right, let's go to improving on the parties and the candidates. The current hoops are popularity, money, and affiliation. Trump was a Democrat before he registered as a Republican. He has as many Democratic virtues and values as he does Republican virtues and values. His son-in-law Kushner said he's running Republican because he can get NASCAR Christians, and they're the easiest, largest group of people to get. So it's just a political situation. Are there flaws in the parties? And then how can we get better candidates? How do we improve on that particular?
I think it goes back to the improving of the election in the first place. You talked about setting the budget cap, and you said you can have it wherever, just set it no matter how high.
Yeah.
I think if you put a height cap, open up the possibility of a third party. This 2-party system just seems every year like people.
There is a possibility. We have multiple. The Constitution isn't a 2-party system. It's just kind of morphed into that. And what the third party does is like JFK or RFK is, I'm going to potentially take away votes, so you have to listen to me and put me in there. I think that's the value of that, and I believe in that whole argument.
I think RFK played it perfect.
Sure.
He came, but what he had to do was he had to narrow down his, I'm going to be about one issue.
Yeah.
I have other issues. Yeah. I'm going to be about this one. It's the most important thing to me, and I'm going to lend someone my support because I do have some sort of following. It's probably the closest we've seen a little bit towards a coalition.
Mm-hmm. Right.
A kind of a coalition type government, which I kind of like watching Israel and some of these other nations, the British Parliament, to have a little bit of those coalitions.
Yeah.
Because you have to we have to figure it out. And
I think we should play that card more here.
Yeah, because it requires you not to give up everything. Like, we could be a Christian coalition, and our platform could be very biblical.
And at the end of the day, you either give us position or you give us a piece of our platform.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that's where we're at.
I do like that. And it's more fun to watch when they're like throwing shoes at each other.
Well, and I mean, will that give us better candidates? You know what I mean? You know, if in any position, if you're ever going to be a pastor, a doctor, a lawyer, anything, you have to have this certification sort of thing. If you're going to run for president, shouldn't there be this civic certification? I mean, you got an age, you know, and that's it. You got an age.
Yeah.
I mean, but should everybody have the same civics course if you're going to have national or statewide?
Well, when we started as a nation, you had to be a landowner just to vote.
And a man.
Yeah,
and you had to be white, you know. So I mean, it's changed, and we, you know. So I think that's we have to improve on the party's process, because right now they're just corporations and they control the candidates at the top. They do, and then so we're getting whoever's playing the money or the politics.
And the word process is because the process produces what it's designed to produce. Right. So you have a water filtration system. You put dirty water in, and you're hoping so. What we're seeing now is the result of the process. And so what's sad about it is somewhere along the way, our current process is filtering out good people.
Yes.
So that good people are like, I'm not even going to run.
Yes.
I can't make it.
That's awesome.
And so that's the problem.
That brings us to improving America now, make America great again. So this whole time we went through all this stuff. Abortion was listed, but the GOP said, that might have been a great political move. Abortion's not a thing, right? They just kind of took that away. And so therefore, I mean, nobody, I think we mentioned transgender surgeries or kids got mentioned in there, but it was a lower level thing. I mean, nobody said LGBTQ.
Yeah.
That was not part of this at all. And so we have a moral problem at making America great again. So you could do all kinds of wonderful fiscal things or defense things or whatever, but if you don't have a ground-based morality, then you're going to have a free-for-all, even if you don't believe in God. Even if we're wrong on our Bible or whatever. And so, I mean, I don't think Trump or Harris was either one. And then foreign policy, domestic policy. What needs to happen right now? We got 2 months before Trump takes government. But what needs to happen in the next 2 months? What do you think he could do, you know, to prep? Because I think already Biden called him and said, "Hey, here's."
Well, I think now's the time to clarify and sharpen, you know, what you're gonna start doing right away.
Right.
Because, you know. Yeah, Harris didn't have much of a platform, but neither did he. I mean,
putting your cabinet together.
Everyone's like, "Oh, the economy is better," but like, what are you gonna do and start getting people ready for like? What
and I think he's done brilliant in being this like wild card, because everyone's just like, okay, we better bow kiss the ring. We better. So I mean, it's like juxtaposing, and he is the art of the deal guy.
Oh, you know? I would have loved to have been on the Washington D.C. transit system yesterday. Because that is all the bureaucrats, that whole subway system. Yeah. That's why it's so nice. It's probably one of the better ones. But it must have been mourning in the sackcloth and gnashing of teeth. Right. Because they're all bureaucrats on there. Yeah. And you write it.
Bring out your dead!
I will tell you this. Yeah. One of the more impressive things about this campaign, Trump's campaign, was the admittance that he said, last time, I'm not a D.C. insider.
Right.
He said, I've been to Washington, D.C. 17 times in my life. It's been recorded for business deals. I'm building the Trump Hotel. Right. So I didn't realize how entrenched the bureaucracy is. Mm-hmm. And so they told me, you know, I need to pick these people that know how to work the system. And I hired all the wrong people. That's why I fired so many.
Right.
Then one thing, he's not afraid to fire people.
Right.
So that's good. Yeah. So what he has said is coming in this term, there's going to be more thought, or he's wiser to who he should hire to come in, which I think is astute in that idea, because the bureaucracy. Yeah. So and it was, you know, in his prideful way, an admittance of I didn't do something perfect.
Right.
Like I did not hire the right
as
people.
Much as I know, I went in and like it's an education as a resident first day. So so we know RFK is going to do some health stuff, which is questionable. We know Elon's going to do some financial stuff,
which will just be awesome to watch.
Right. But what about Vivek Ramaswamy?
Yeah.
What's he going to do? What's his thing? Because he's pretty much been almost promised a spot. What do you think because he was a Democrat. He was a young Democrat. Him and Pete Buttigieg came up together as the young Democrats. Yeah. And then all of a sudden now he's a Republican. Okay, so but what is his place in this new thing? Is he going to be a Secretary of State type?
Yeah.
Is he going to just be the what do you call it, ambassador to India? I mean, what he's going to do something.
No, he'll get something
like Elon Musk and like that. So might Dana White.
Right? Dana White. Too.
Yeah. He's Secretary of Defense now.
Secretary of the Gladiatorial Games.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think probably Vivek probably gets a little bit of his pick of the litter.
Right.
A couple things. There's, I don't. Secretary of State.
Yeah.
I think he.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think where he would fit good. There has been reports that this girl that the financial stuff. You can speak up, Jack.
He's financial. I think.
Yeah.
He'll be in the fight.
He seems to be understanding the economy.
Yeah, and he's a businessman.
Yeah.
There are other reports are that his campaign chairman, this girl that was running him, has been one of the few voices that can actually throttle him, like knows how to get him to stop sticking his mouth in his foot in his mouth and stay on task.
Right.
So there's been a lot of talk about her being the chief of staff.
Yeah.
There because she kind of has figured out how to, because he didn't have that many gaps.
Yeah.
I mean, he kind of stayed on agenda, stayed on his thing, and so. I'm sure he has the possibility of saying a lot more stupider stuff than he did.
Yeah. Should make Dana White the press secretary.
That would be interesting. People would pay attention to that. You know what I'm saying? And that what does Joe Rogan get to do? Whatever he wants, right? Whatever he wants.
Talk about that influence of podcasting.
Oh yeah,
Joe Rogan.
A lot of people.
I think that's part of it.
90 million.
ABC, MSNBC just did not get to have their way this time.
90 million.
Were very upset with Joe Rogan's podcast and the crew. People that normally would, be considered fans. A lot of people are like, he gave him which he didn't. It was more than that. But I do think that podcast.
Oh, that played a difference.
Before, I mean, that's the best. That's the number one most listened to thing in the world.
But he made the rounds, and so did JD, and it showed that they were willing to talk to guys who everybody knows we're going to press them on some things and ask them and make them say what they believe.
I feel like Rogan did press Trump. Trump's the hardest guy to press. I feel like Rogan did, but there was just some things he didn't touch.
Well, I also think Rogan's a dude, and I think off camera he goes, he's a dude. Yeah, like Trump's a dude.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Yeah. He spits. Yeah. You know, he's a dude, and I think there was a part. I think he left that meeting liking Trump more personally.
Yeah. Just on the virtue of like we're in a tough world. We need someone who can just
Rogan's
not have about feelings.
Yeah. The fact that Kamala wouldn't sit down and talk or debate.
Yeah.
She did do some podcasts, and they were just the most morally, they were void of any value to society.
Right.
Yeah. Like, she went on a podcast that is just literally all they talk about is relationships. It's like you're running for president.
We're on the paper or plastic podcast.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that's like not anything. All right, guys. Did God spare Trump? Is this a God thing? What does it mean? Is there...
I'd say it's definitely providence. Whichever way, I don't know.
Do you think it was all an act? Like someone said, when the countdown, turn your head, look this way, right there, and I'll shoot the top of your head.
I think it's poetic that he won with Pennsylvania after being shot there. So whether I do or do not, I do think that's something to think about.
What does it mean? Got a really good sniper.
Hey, if that's part of your thing, that's a man too. Hey, I'm going to win this thing. And listen, don't miss.
Yeah.
Right. So.
Yeah. No. Well, obviously, the election didn't surprise God.
Yeah.
I mean, but what did we get? Did we get a Saul? Did we get the king that we wanted? Right. So there's biblical prep. Did we get Saul?
Beautiful.
Or, did we get Cyrus?
Right.
Do we get a purging king, but God is molding him for a purpose? And so.
Yeah. And I would say yes to both of them.
Yeah.
So we'll.
I just don't think he's a David.
Right.
No.
Right.
I don't think he's David.
No.
Well, having an executive, legislative, and judicial all go GOP, is that going to change anything? We've had that in Michigan before.
Yeah.
And I think we've actually had it in Washington, D.C.
To great disappointment.
Right, because then all of a sudden, let's make a RFRA. Let's make a Religious Freedom Restoration Act. And all of a sudden, you're taking power that you don't need to take. Or it was like under your last thing, you let things in that we need to look in. So I think Trump has a different mindset going in this time. I think he will use it more as a even bully pulpit, but I don't think it's going to change LGBTQ, and that sort of thing. But what can it change? They say he might get another 2 or 3 Supreme Court justices.
So we're kind of following that along. Mm-hmm. We, our platform is pretty clear of the things that we're important with. Yeah. Okay. But if we only got one, what would we want?
I know that abortion, everybody says that's a big deal because that's murder and that's killing, all that stuff. But that does not take away religious liberty.
Right.
In other words, you can have this this fight on abortion, win or lose, and it doesn't necessarily touch all the religious liberty issues.
Right.
But with the LGBTQ civil right issue, it's that or religious liberty. So to me, you know, in fact, it was the abortion thing, and then this gave way to that. So to me, I would love to, but I think we're past the point of no return on it. But I would love to take away this this LGBTQ vice hold.
Yeah.
On,
well,
you know, like freedom from religion.
Right. So the platform of religious liberty then extends to the proper definition of marriage and these other acknowledgments. So which then you can make an argument would produce, because now government out of that arena, throttling back religion, let faith in the free market of ideas express itself, would then lead to the end of abortion.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know if the end of abortion leads to religious liberty, but no, we want both.
Yeah.
And 10 other things.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying, if you were to get one.
Yeah. To me, that's what it would be. It would be religious liberty being restored, and that means you have to pull back on LGBTQ as a civil right. I think it's a mental health issue. You know, I think it's an abomination issue. But to me, that one, if we don't deal with that one.
Yeah. And I would say being a treasurer and just, you know, I'm writing all the checks, and the schools are getting most of the tax money.
Yeah.
And I have to pay those taxes.
Yeah.
And
if it's woke, it's not even secular anymore, right? As a religion, it's woke as a religion.
So you're going for my money, and you're doing with it things that I do not agree with, and I, you know, what recourse do I have with my taxes? And then you're going for the conscience as well, what I can say and can't say. Yeah. And so you're hitting me in those two areas, and so that in the education system, they're getting all the money.
That's it, and they're getting power,
and they're turning out a horrible product.
Well, and so because now school boards are separate from city boards, you know, city elected boards, we have a democratic city board that we elect, and then we have a communistic school board that we elect. And so in every community in America, we've got a whole nother government, you know, even on the local level. So that, you know, that's really dangerous. All right. So I think one of the big things right now is we're going to reinstate or reemphasize or re-strengthen the Abraham Accords. That's either going to push for a two-state solution in Israel, or it's going to allow a one Israel. That's where these accords are going to go. And Pastor Jay, I found this verse in Genesis 17, verses 4 through 6. As for me, behold, my covenant is with thee, and thou shalt be a father of many nations. Neither shall thy name any more be called Abram, but thy name shall be Abraham. For a father of many nations have I made thee, and I will make thee exceeding fruitful, and I will make nations of thee, and kings shall come out of thee. What's brilliant about this is we see the theological ramifications that Jesus came. You know, Matthew and Luke, Abraham is part of the genealogy. And so we know this is theological, but this is also political, like you said, that God put this thing in order, and all of a sudden it comes back as Abraham Accords, and that's what we're dealing with today. And so, I mean, are we in the last days? This one thing alone screams that we're coming to this fruition, this hot spot.
Right, and regardless of whatever we believe about the election, we are assured that the outcome of this election does put us one step closer in the completion of God's plan.
Right.
And we know what his plan is.
Right.
And so that statement would be true whether it was Kamala or Trump.
Right.
But since it was Trump, now we have to, some sort of in our hearts and minds now realize that Trump is one step closer to that completion. Now, you know, I know some of our brethren would say he's the reprieve, he's the space of grace, he's the opportunity for revival. Yeah. And, okay, maybe so, but that is part of that plan. Yeah. And so
my experience has been that nobody's going to push now for revival. The space of grace is Christians becoming lazy.
Well, and that's what I think. And that's what, so that comes from Ezra chapter 9, the space of grace. And he's talking about them being returned from captivity. Yeah. But then he comes back to Israel only to find God's people wholly married to abomination. Yeah. And so Ezra's like, I sit here astonished at this. So there was... So
I gave you space for grace, you didn't do it.
So like what I said last night to the church was, after the election last night, we did not become more Christian in one night. No. We did not become less depraved. Our abominations did not clean up overnight.
And it's for all we got to pray and stuff. A, I didn't see a lot of prayer. And B, I don't see a lot of gratitude in prayer. Yeah. At the end of this. So, I mean, it has to happen. Jesse, we're going to give you, because you won an election. You are American above all Americans in that you did this. God is in action in spite of human results. Mm-hmm. And so, God's got to work through you in your office as well. But based upon this idea of post-elections and where we're at, I want you to have the final say before we sign off today.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me on the podcast. I didn't know I had to win an election to get on, but this has been good.
Okay. You did.
So now we know the price.
Yes. To get on camera, though, we let Jackson be off camera. But
yeah.
He's got a face for radio.
Yes. Yeah, God is absolutely in control. And, it's kind of been sad to see people Christians even, who are saying, about the dumbest thing you can say is God's in control. I'm like, well, no, it's not. That should be the sentiment always, is that God's in control. The reality is he doesn't really need us to do what he's going to do. What's awesome to me is that he wants to use us, and he wants a relationship with us. And that makes it all the better, because if he needed us, he wouldn't be God to do what he's going to do. But that he wants to use us, and that we owe our allegiance to him and to his word.
Hey, excellent. Here we are, post-election. I think what matters right now is what we're going to do with this. Mm-hmm. It's not time to be lazy. It is time to start now for whatever's next. And certainly for Christians, we still got to win people to Christ. That's how we get voters on our side. We still have to plant churches. And we're going to talk about that in a future podcast. But folks, we thank you for joining us today. God bless America. Remember, the best culture is Bible culture. It's proven and it works. Hi, this is Doug Levesque. Thanks for watching the Bible Nation podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Go to our website, BibleNation.org, to check out all of our offerings. Thanks again for watching.